Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to being here at the NAB show. Today, I'm going to present you some facts about cloud video streaming without plugins. My name is Gerald Zankl. I'm from Bitmovin. We have also a booth here directly this way. And if you have any further questions, we can talk about the questions after the session. And for sure, we are always happy to welcome you at our booth. Bitmovin itself is specialized in adaptive streaming solutions. We are focusing on MPEG-Dash as well as HLS. We have two offices, one office in Palo Alto here in the States and one office in Austria. As mentioned, focusing on adaptive streaming. We co-created also the MPEG-Dash standard, and our products are worldwide in use, our encoding service as well as our HTML5 video player. But now, let's go to the points I want to discuss with you today. I will give you a brief overview about the current video streaming problems. There are still some problems which we see and which also seeing some other companies in the market, which you can partly solve with MPEG-Dash and a good implementation of adaptive streaming standards. I will then talk about video streaming without plugins, why it's so important to don't use plugins anymore. And at the last point for this presentation, I will give you an overview about our services, how we can help you, where we are in the whole video chain, and what's going on there. Video streaming in general, so there are still some problems out there. And on the next slides, I will give you some general statistics and to be aware of really the problems which are nowadays still in online video streaming ongoing. The main issue of today's infrastructure is definitely buffering, plugins, the complexity of the whole ecosystem, and a lot more. Buffering, but buffering not happens always because of a bad internet technology. It happens more or less of a bad usage of the technology which is provided here. Let me go to the next slide to talk about a little bit more about buffering. So the source of this slide is from the Conviva report, and here you see the percentage of the views that experiencing buffering. And in the last couple of years, we are moving in the right direction, but that statistic is overall devices and overall bandwidths. And for the whole reporting which was done by Conviva. And we see that 2012 was a long time ago, but we decreased all the percentage to a level which is 1/4 of the viewers are still expecting buffering, which is bad. Because buffering, you are losing money, especially if you are OTT services, video on demand portals, whatever. You are losing money in lost subscriptions, lost revenue, because people are not viewing your advertisements and at the end dropping off and the engagement rate goes down. This means especially if, for example, overall 1% of buffering, you have an increasement of 1% of buffering, then you lose on the average viewer 14 minutes of lost engagement, which means when you can reduce your buffering because you use a better technology or you implement a new standard or you stream without plugins, you can increase the engagement rates of your user, and at the end you can increase the revenue you are generating with every user out of that market. And that's really important because when you are using deprecated technology, you're losing money. And that's something which is most important for us, because we want with our technology to ensure that you are not losing money, that you're generating more money out of advertisements and out of subscriptions. That's more or less the first really big issue in the industry, that videos are still buffering because of a bad usage of existing technologies, or if you use deprecated and old technologies. The second major point where the industry is losing money is low quality. With a bad implementation of current technologies, you can't deliver a best user experience. So here we have a statistics around the world, the average bandwidths which are available for delivering at the end media and videos. And you see here that we are between 1.5 and 2 megabits per second, which is the average rate which can be delivered over all devices and over all platforms. And if you think about delivering of 4K content or even Full HD content, which is not possible with 1.5 Mbit per second, or even not possible in a way that the user is satisfied, then we have to think about that. And here it's definitely most important to use then adaptive streaming technologies which can adapt to the bandwidth. Because also nowadays the bandwidth is a limitation on the market for video streaming. So that's more or less really a major problem delivering low quality, because if you are a VOD service, an OTT platform, whatever, just streaming videos in the web, you will be every time compared with major platforms like Netflix, like YouTube. And these guys are doing a really good job, and you have to be doing the same job and delivering the videos in the same quality at least as these companies are doing, because otherwise you deliver a bad quality and a bad technology. Also, when we are thinking about on virtual reality and 360-degree videos, it's even more important to use the bandwidth you have in an efficient way. Probably also another really big point is complexity. The whole video streaming, the whole end-to-end solutions are getting more and more complexer. There are a lot of more devices out there on the market, more platforms with virtual reality devices. There is a huge new market and huge new devices which we also should stream, and should stream videos in a good way and in a high quality. And to get rid of different technologies, we of Bitmovin, we also think about how can we decrease the complexity levels of different solutions, of different vendors, to get really to a point where it's easy to build up a video service, and it's easy to stream out the videos in a fast way. And I would say, beside buffering and also low quality and also the usage of plugins, there is still Silverlight, Adobe Flash, which are used a lot on websites. You see on the right-hand side that in 2011, still 50% of the websites global are used Flash plugins. And this means every time you are using a plugin, or you as a viewer have to install a plugin, it's a problem, because also here you are dropping off, you are losing engagement. And the good thing is that this, the numbers are going down, Flash, mainly because HTML5 becomes a major part for delivering videos without plugins. I will give you a more detailed overview about what are really the advantages of using HTML5 as a streaming technology, and using HTML5 to show the video and to play the video. And that's here mainly really the good thing, that Flash and Silverlight also is decreasing. And the bad thing, for sure, there are a lot of services on the market now which are now using Adobe Flash as a plugin, and also Silverlight, and that's bad for the users. So in summary, as mentioned, we have the three major problems, which is buffering, which you can avoid using a better technology, a better streaming technology like MPEG Dash or HLS. The second problem is that you delivering low quality, because the bandwidths you have not the bandwidths available in every use case, and that's why you are then delivering a low quality, and you should also have some representations available for these low qualities, that the user or that the video is at the end not buffering at all. The complexity of all the vendors out there, of the whole video end-to-end chain, is also increasing. for sure also because we are getting more and more devices and more platforms out there which we should deliver the videos to. And the major problem, number 4, definitely plugins. So if you are using plugins or if your service needs to install a plugin, it's bad because a lot of users won't install that plugin and then they can't watch the videos anymore. But how is it achievable to stream really or do streaming without plugins? HTML5 is here more or less the solution. So the HTML5 technology in the browser, especially the media source extensions, which are enabled now in all major browsers. Also Firefox was probably the last one who enabled the media source extension support last year in November. And so with HTML5 it's possible to have this native support directly in the browser where no plugins are needed anymore. What does it mean exactly? HTML5 adaptive streaming, or especially also Bitmovin's HTML5 adaptive streaming player, allows you to stream MPEG- as well as HLS natively with the support of the media source extensions. So the media source extensions are part of every modern browser. I have an overview then later in this presentation where you see for which versions are the media source extensions are supported, but in general you can say all newer browsers are or can stream videos without plugins and with HTML5. And with MPEG- and HLS you can also cover every device and every platform because these two formats, you can catch all devices and platforms with these two formats. And what we are also seeing on the market is that more and more the technologies are moving away from using plugins and getting to an open ecosystem, and these ecosystems are going to win. Which means, as already mentioned, that HTML5 and the HTML5 video playout with the media source extensions will be the major technology enabling a perfect user experience and a perfect delivery capability for videos on the web. And as already mentioned, you have no more need for plugins. And that's probably the most important thing of my message from today. Get rid of these plugins because you are losing subscriptions, you are losing money in lost revenues and ads because of plugins, because the user won't install plugins. And also already mentioned the objectives, just really brief how the HTML5 media source extensions is working. It's more or less that the decoding happens in the browser, and that's why you are not need any more plugins because the browser has already implemented these decoding technologies, and so you can use the media source extensions within HTML5. But the big question is, and that's probably the question a lot of you guys are asking, that is how can we reach really every browser and every device with an adaptive streaming technology like MPEG- and HLS? We can definitely, and I will give you here an overview about the desktop browsers. And on the desktop browsers, as already mentioned, with Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, Safari, and Opera, these are definitely the major browsers, and if you are supporting these browsers natively without plugins, you are already doing a good job to get rid of the plugins which are still used on a lot of websites. There are different possibilities to go for. So we see two possibilities, one possibility with Dash and another possibility with HLS. And let me start with Dash and HTML5. So every major browser, as mentioned, Firefox with the Firefox version of 42, which was released last year in November, this was the last browser who enabled the media source extensions. And so now really every major browser you can stream Dash with HTML5. So no need for Flash, no need for Silverlight on Dash and HTML5. For older browsers, for sure there is also some market shares for Firefox versions below 42, for example. Here you can even go for the Dash Flash plugin to cover here really 100% of the devices. With HLS, it's the same. On the HLS side, for Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer 9, as well as for Opera, there is also HTML5 now implemented. In the past, we did it with transmuxing on the client, but now it's also still in our latest player release. We have the HTML5 support native also with HLS on these browser platforms. And for sure, we can always fall back to Flash if really the browser is too old and has not enabled the media source extension. So that's always possible, and you should consider that for sure, but not as a major part of your platform integration. On the mobile side, it's still the same. We are covering at least the Android browsers and the Windows Phone browsers with Dash and HTML5 because there it's supported. An exception of that is iOS for sure, because on iOS it's not possible to go for Dash and HTML5, but it's still possible to go for HLS. So we see here also that Dash and MPEG Dash is the key driver for future video technologies, but at the moment we have to use HLS too, because on iOS it's still not possible to stream with Dash as well as HTML5. So here we are going for HLS as well as MPEG Dash. There was really a brief overview about to cover all platforms and all devices with HTML5 and Dash. But I would say that's just a starting point, because now it's your turn to monetize this content. You are now having the videos online, the videos are playing natively with HTML5, which is good. But one really major topic is DRM. So you have two ways to monetize your content. One way is with DRM, especially for subscription-based video-on-demand portals, for example. Or on the second-hand side, you have the possibility to monetize with ads. And with DRMs, it's also something like with plugins on the video playback, because when you really want to enable DRMs for every browser and every platform, there were still in the past needed to install some plugins to enable that. But also with HTML5 and MPEG Dash, there are a lot of possibilities to get rid from these plugins and start natively with HTML5, MPEG Dash, and DRM. What does this mean on the DRM side in HTML5 without plugins? Also, as the browser versions enabled the media source extensions, we have now also enabled, or these browser versions also enabled the EME, which means these are the encrypted media extensions. And here, for example, on also the major browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge, or Opera, you have with Dash and HTML5 a native support for the major DRM systems, which means for you that you can natively support white wine, for example, within Chrome and with Dash and HTML5, which is great, because then you don't need any more plugins to really also secure your content and protect your content with these major DRMs. For Firefox, for sure, Primetime, also, best of my knowledge, white wine is now possible in the latest version of Firefox to cover that here. And Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge, you can go with Play Ready. And on Opera, you can also use white wine modular. So this means now, more or less on the desktop side, you can cover with two DRMs, which is white wine as well as Play Ready, everything on the desktop side, natively with Dash and HTML5, which is great. Same more or less on the HTML5 side with HLS, so more or less for the iOS devices and OS devices, or on that operating systems. Here, as you see for Safari, you can even go for Fairplay, but for all the other browsers, you have to go with the EES encryption in HLS. But that's really only for iOS devices and OS devices. And there is also the market share for Safari big, so here you are going with Fairplay, and should be also then here good to go with that. On the mobile devices, also Android, Android you can go for white wine, and on Safari for sure you can go also with AES and HLS, and the streaming devices, because that's getting also more and more of interest, especially when you are thinking about Chromecast, about Amazon's Fire Stick TV, about Apple TV. That's getting more and more complex and more important to also support these streaming devices with a DRM. For Chromecast, for sure, it's easy to go for white wine modular. On Apple TV, it's FairPlay. On Amazon's Fire Stick, it's also white wine, because there it's also based on Android, so you can also go for white wine on the Amazon Fire Stick. Now, I will give you just a brief overview where Bitmovin fits into that ecosystem and how we enabled adaptive streaming without plugins for our customers, and how Bitmovin at the end can help you building that and improving your services to stream without plugins at the end. This is really a basic chain of the full stack video infrastructure you see in a basic way, I would say. You see here, starting from the left with just RAW files, so MP4 files, mezzanine files, whatever, you can ingest that into our service and into our system, and we can generate out of these MP4 files, which are still progressive files, which are not adaptive streaming content in MPEG- as well as HLS. So we recommend to generate at least 5 renditions, starting, for example, with 400 kilobits and going up to 5 Mbit per second or whatever. But for sure here, you're absolutely flexible. And you can encode then MPEG- as well as HLS content. Then you have that content ready. And in another step, you need a player who can play that MPEG- content and the HLS content in a perfect way, without buffering, without the needs of plugins. And that are here our 2 parts which we are delivering now, the encoding part as well as the HTML5 player part. And that ensures you to deliver really the perfect video. On our booth we have several demos which we are happy to show, also on already with HEVC, for example, also on VR and 360, but for sure also for default streaming use cases and the usage, how you can use encoding, as well as then the HTML5 player. So that are the 2 areas we are focusing, and that's the services we can provide you, that you can rid of these plugins like Flash and Silverlight, and stream without plugins. Here's more or less the video infrastructure in a more structured way, I would say. So what you really need to build an end-to-end video portal or end-to-end video infrastructure. Also, again, the ingest of MP4 files or mezzanine files, just RAW files. And here we are going with the encoding and the player then at the end. But the target should be, if you really want to build or improve your video on demand portal or your OTT platform, that you look into every of these parts, especially the encoding, the storage, CDN, player, and then try to optimize each of these parts. And a first step could be, for example, to generate HLS and MPEG- content, and the second part, for example, using the player in HTML5 to get rid of the plugins, and for sure then also using a reporting system, a comprehensive analytics system, to get some more details out there and to re-optimize the whole chain. And for sure, the main point to guarantee a user experience, or what is probably from our point of view a low-hanging fruit, if you, for example, already have HLS content available, but playing this HLS content still with a Flash player, is to replace the player. And if you are replacing the player, you can easily do that, because it's HTML5 JavaScript, so that's not a big deal. And then you can get rid of these plugins using, for example, HLS with HTML5 and only Flash as a fallback if really HTML5 and the media source extensions are not available. On the player side, the features for this adaptive streaming player with HTML5 are I would say these 6 one are our major features, or what we see as major core components. It's definitely HTML5 to avoid the plugins for MPEG-Dash as well as HLS. We are supporting, as shown, the encryption and the DRM stuff, so you can go natively also for DRM and encryption. And probably the most important thing for a good player is to have an API and a lot of customization possibilities. Because what we have seen with a lot of customer deployments is that it's partly a problem if you license a player and you have not the possibility to customize that player for your own needs. And with an API and with the possibility to customize the player, you can use a player under the hood, white labeled for your own. Focus is also on very low startup delays, which means that the player is up and running in, for example, 300 milliseconds, which we are achieving a time to first frame. And that's also with Flash plugins not possible, because it takes too long to load first the Flash plugin, then load the video element within the Flash plugin. And with HTML5 and the media source extensions, this is still possible. To monetize the content in a third way or in a second way, beside DRM, it's ads for sure. So a really good player should also support ad, VAST, and VPaid, for example. And what we are seeing also now is more and more a use case for virtual reality and 360-degree streaming, which is coming more and more, and also our player already supporting that, and we have showcases on our booth. So finally, I have to say that cloud video streaming without plugins, so usage of HTML5 and the media source extensions, is especially not a big deal. If you, for example, have already HLS content available and you are now streaming that HLS or playing that HLS content with a Flash player, it's really easy to replace that Flash player with an HTML5 video player and use then HTML5 as well as HLS for playing videos without plugins. So that would be probably a first step to go for that. You can easily try that. We have several attractive plans online, and you can sign up for free for the encoding. You can try encoding for HLS as well as for MPEG-Dash, and you can download our HTML5 adaptive streaming player with all features and all functionalities which are included. So this means you can try it with ads, you can try it with DRM. We have no limitations on that end. So it's really one player, and we have several attractive plans, but the free player contains DRM support, customization, the full API, the full feature set as a player where you spend, for example, $10,000 per month on revenue because you are even generating more impressions. So you have a basic impression set which you can try for free. Just download it and try it out, encode probably some pieces with our encoding system, and then you will see you can publish and deploy it to a website, and you will see how easy it is to really build a video platform without plugins and without the dependency to plugins like Flash or Silverlight. As already mentioned, would be great to see you at our booth. Just come to our booth. We are here the whole show, have the booth directly here in that area. For further information, our team is happy to also show you some demos at our booth. If you need anything in addition, drop me a line. I'm absolutely happy to help and say thank you for your attention. And if there are some questions, just ping us and come to our booth. Thank you very much.